In this video, we're diving into a chilling investigation filled with lies, betrayal, and a heartbreaking truth. Let's get started. People who work for the police or are close to the suspect have seen the darkest, most twisted secrets come out in the questioning room. Every action, word, syllable, posture, and facial expression is broken down and studied in this room by police and people who are interested in real crimes. Today's case isn't going to be a crash lesson in how to look guilty and use body language to your advantage. Instead, you'll see how a suspect goes from having his lips sealed to singing like a bird in just a few minutes. It's all because of one very smart detective who pulled just the right strings to get the man to talk. Walter Chaffin and Donna Johnston had a daughter named Michelle Chaffin on June 6, 1981. She was born in Humble, Texas. Humble is close to Houston and is thought to be a nice, safe, and growing neighborhood and a great spot to raise a family. Michelle has never met a stranger since she was a child. She had best friends with everyone. People loved to talk to her because she was so friendly and easy to be around. Michelle and her brother David were the only kids living in the Chaffin home, so it made sense that they were very close. Michelle was like a second mother to David. Michelle was a caring person who looked out for her siblings a lot. She and David did everything together. During their whole life, they were pretty much attached at the hip. Michelle was a sensible and good kid. But as soon as she finished high school in 2001, she met a man and got married. We only know that this man's last name was Warner. Michelle got pregnant without telling anyone. 9 months later, they had a healthy girl named Haley. But Michelle's happiness didn't last long. All too quickly, in 2003, her marriage fell apart and she and her husband split up. Haley did move in with her dad, and Michelle's life fell apart at that point. Michelle's stress level was too high after getting divorced and losing the child she loved very much. She couldn't find a good way to deal with her problems. Michelle quickly became hooked on drugs, which made things much worse. She went from being a happy wife and loving mother to going out with friends, and things were getting worse quickly. There were times when she wouldn't be seen for days or even weeks. At one point, she was jailed for possession. Michelle has been disappearing a lot lately, and her family was always scared when she did. Someone knew Michelle was in pain, but they didn't know how to help her. They could only pray and hope that Michelle found her way back. Almost miraculously, she did. Michelle had a sudden realization that she needed to make changes in her life. Michelle knew that her daughter Haley was the most important person in her life. She didn't want to let Haley see her mother in this way because she would feel bad about it. So Michelle started to clean up and get her life back on track. She even started going to college. She was learning criminal law because she wanted to be a lawyer one day. Michelle also got a job as a secretary at a medical office. Things were finally getting better for her. In 2008, she had been clean for an amazing 4 years and was happy with her life. Her family was so proud of her because she had finally found her way out of the darkness. Michelle was back to being the responsible, on-time, and driven woman she was before. 2008 was also the year she met someone else at work. The person was named Mark Castellano and worked as an IT specialist. Mark and Michelle couldn't have been more different from each other. Her family was glad she had found someone, but they didn't really understand what Michelle saw in Mark. Donna said that Mark was just a weirdo. The first thing Donna thought about Mark was strange. Mark seemed like a strange man to her. In all honesty, she had no idea why her smart, pretty daughter would choose someone like Mark. Each and every mom wants the best for her daughter. To each mom, her daughter is the most beautiful person in the world, and most likely no one else will ever be good enough. But Mark and Michelle didn't seem right together when I saw them together. David, Michelle's brother, also thought that Mark was not quite right. He didn't know why, but he couldn't get rid of the feeling that Mark wasn't right for Michelle. Mark and Michelle's relationship got pretty serious, though, because Michelle didn't seem to see anything wrong with him. After meeting for a year, Michelle got pregnant again. This time, a boy named Caden was born to the pair, but soon the same thing would happen again, and Mark would leave Michelle and Caden without saying a word. It could have been the stress of having a child. It could have been something else. We don't know, but we do know that Michelle and Caden were left to their own devices when their relationship stopped without warning. Michelle had a hard time at first. It was no surprise that she was tired from having to work and take care of a baby, but Michelle was going to have a great surprise. Since she got the job at a law company in Houston, Texas, she had to move there for good. Mark was the only guy from Houston she knew. Since he lived in Houston, Michelle got in touch with him and tried to work out a deal. Michelle planned to work long days, so she wanted to find a place for her and Caden to live where Caden could be safe and Mark could watch him. I want to make it clear that Michelle did not want to get back together with Mark. It was clear that she didn't want to date a man who wouldn't promise to take care of his child. Mark was to co-parent Caden, which means he was to be responsible for the child they had together. Mark finally said yes, and the three of them moved into Mark's Houston apartment. All in all, Michelle's life was going really well. She had a steady job, was back on her feet, and she and Mark were both raising their son. Then, Michelle just vanished without a word. What was lasting, Michelle's brother David couldn't reach her, and her silence began to bother everyone. David and Michelle talked on the phone every single day, no matter what. If Michelle was busy, she'd call him back later. But David never heard back from Michelle all day or even afterward. He then called Mark and asked where Michelle was. What Mark then said, though, really shocked David. Mark said that he and Michelle had a fight on September 22nd. Michelle then went into her room and slammed the door shut. When Mark went in later, Michelle was gone. Like that, it was gone. She left Caden behind and didn't take her car. Mark had no idea where Michelle was. It was very scary, and Michelle Warner, 31, was reported missing right away. The police went to Mark's place to make sure he was okay. That's where they saw some strange things. First, the police saw computers in the house, which isn't really a big deal. Mark worked in IT. Strangely, though, all the hard drives were taken out, but couldn't be found. Also, detectives found a note written by Mark and mailed to Michelle that was taped to a mirror. Mark wrote in the letter that he was very mad and that he was taking Caden to live with his parents. Mark also said Michelle was having a drug-filled weekend, even though she had been clean for more than 4 years. Mark didn't hold back when he called Michelle names and put her down in the letter. It made everyone feel confused and on edge. After that, detectives went into Michelle's room as well. One officer just stood in front of the closet because nothing seemed strange or alarming. I see what you mean, but the closet didn't have anything in it. But the detective couldn't get rid of the strange, cold feeling that something bad had happened in this small room. He thought this room was trying to tell a story, but the police couldn't put their finger on it. Mark had to be questioned by the cops to find out why he was so mad at Michelle. After this encounter and everything that happened next, things became very strange very quickly. This will go down in true crime history as one of the scariest and most interesting cases ever. The lie in the interview. The police went to Mark's parents' house in West Texas to talk to him about what was going on. It turned out that Mark had a question of his own, which would make the police confused. Mark asked straight out if the famous Dr. Phil could talk to him. The mother of his child is lost, and this man only wants to be the center of attention for a short time. No matter what, though, the agents were able to get Mark a spot on Dr. Phil. Even though Mark asked for this to happen, I think the police only agreed because they thought Mark's showing on the show might help them find Michelle. Mark was interviewed by Dr. Phil. He was acting very strangely, even though he didn't say that he had anything to do with Michelle's disappearance. Mark only talked about himself, and it didn't take Dr. Phil long to figure out that he was incredibly self-centered and uncaring, and that he didn't care about his missing ex-girlfriend at all. He was enjoying the attention he was getting for the first and maybe last time. With all the recording gear and everything, police couldn't wait to question Mark after this interview. They had their own trick this time, though. They wanted to get Mark to believe them, make him look like a saint, and force him to tell them what he was hiding. It was a strange move, but this man was a selfish jerk. So what better way to make him feel good than to tell him how great he is? They were smart cops who knew what they were doing. The cops were aware that Mark would enjoy the attention and praise, and it didn't take long for Mark to make things easy for them. The questions began like any other chat. Mark was told by Detective Phil Waters that he was not being arrested and that he could leave whenever he wanted. As soon as Mark was asked a question, he showed his very creepy and strange side. The first thing he did was talk badly about Michelle. He said she was pretty and princess-like and that she could get anything she wanted. Mark also said that Michelle was very mean and hurtful to him physically, but Mark, being the saint that he was, never did anything to hurt Michelle back. Mark made himself look like a victim in the relationship, which was exactly what the police wanted. Mark had already put his trust in Detective Phil, who was acting like a typical nice cop. He was actually very kind to Mark. He told him that he knew why Mark put up with Michelle's attitude, and that his heart goes out to Mark, among other things. Mark then included Caden in the mess, and said Michelle was physically abusing both him and Caden. Once Detective Phil heard Caden's name, he chose to use some good old psychology to corner Mark. He wanted to know that whatever Mark did to Michelle was done to keep Caden safe, and not because he wanted to hurt Michelle. Mark knew from Detective Phil that Michelle had been through a terrible event. Mark probably didn't know that they hadn't found her body yet. At this point, though, Detective Phil wanted to know what Mark had done to her and get him to confess, because there was no proof that Michelle had been missing. If Mark didn't confess, they would have nothing, and Michelle and her family would never get the answers they needed. It was either do or die for Detective Phil. Mark trusted him and saw a police officer as a friend who understood why he did what he did. As soon as Detective Phil played his last card, Mark finally gave up. It was the only time he had gotten emotional during the whole questioning. During the Dr. Phil interview and when Michelle went missing, Mark never shed a tear for the mother of his child. But now, it was like the fact that he had hurt Michelle to protect Caden had cornered him, and he couldn't hide the guilt of whatever he did to Michelle anymore. So Mark finally told the truth. Michelle's life ended with him. Anytime Mark said those words, Detective Phil felt a rush of different emotions, including relief, fear, and anger. It wasn't a heartbroken ex-boyfriend who was now a single dad. It was a murderer. First, I want to say that this is Mark's account of what happened. We'll never really know what happened that made things get so much worse, so use this knowledge however you want. Mark says that he and Michelle were at his place, though. Apparently, Michelle's rude behavior annoyed him. She was clearly mad when she got home, and she was going to get even with him. She picked things up and threw them all over the place, then told Mark to clean up. Mark did what he was told because he was a powerless victim. Michelle hit him a few times while she was doing it before turning around and going to her room. That's when Mark said Caden was hiding in his room. Here was the point where Mark had had enough. He stormed into Michelle's room and threw her to the bed, out of control. Sadly, he killed Michelle almost right away with his bare hands, but there was still a scene that was even worse. Mark killed Michelle just minutes ago, and Caden walked into the room where Michelle was lying on the bed, dead. The innocent child asked Mark what was wrong with Michelle. Mark gave a stiff answer. "Mummy's taking a nap." It's hard for me to imagine what Caden saw. What do you do after seeing something like this and knowing what really happened to Michelle, even if you don't realize it for weeks, months, or years? Maybe he didn't know that his mum was dead. This boy saw the body of his mother lying there. He'll have to confront that picture for the remainder of his days. Mark quickly got Caden out of the room and gave him a bath. He then put Michelle's body in her bedroom closet. Now that we look back, the officer who looked suspiciously into Michelle's closet wasn't crazy. It was that room where something terrible happened, and Michelle was locked in the closet at one point. It's just so horrible, and it proves that gut feelings and instincts are almost always right. Mark used Michelle's car to take Caden to his parents' house, and then he came back to get rid of Michelle's body. Putting Michelle's body in a trash bag, he put it in her own car and drove just outside of Midland. He dug a hole in the ground and buried Michelle there before leaving. Surveillance video also caught all of this. Mark was seen driving back to his flat early on September 24th. A little after 3 a.m., he was seen pulling the plastic container. At 6 a.m., he finally left the apartment in the car. Detective Phil called in his partner, Sergeant Harris, after the confession, and Mark played out the whole scene in front of them. There was still Michelle's body that police had to find before they could officially charge Mark with her murder, even though Mark had admitted to killing his ex-girlfriend. With the help of a map Mark gave them, the detectives and the FBI looked for Michelle's body. After some searching in the huge oil fields of West Texas, they found something that would be the terrible ending to this case. The hole was not very deep, and Michelle Warner's body was found after digging. The police also checked a dumpster near Mark's apartment and found Michelle's credit card, which had been cut up, along with some clothes, sunglasses, Mark's business cards, and black tape that had been used to sadly tie Michelle's body up. It was finally possible for the cops to charge Mark Castellano with killing Michelle Warner. He was arrested on October 1st, 2012, but this guy said he wasn't guilty, even though Mark told the cops everything on tape. And the sentence is, Mark's confession was the main piece of proof the prosecutors used in the trial. On the other hand, the defense said that Mark's actions were caused by sudden passion. But I don't see how passion can be a legal reason for murder. Lawyers for Mark said that Michelle was a violent woman who used Mark as a punching bag, and that Mark had lost it on that terrible day. Due to his desire to stop being abused by this woman, he lost his temper and killed Michelle. As soon as the defense said Michelle was rude to Mark, the prosecution quickly shot those down. They said that Mark should have filed official complaints against her if he was being abused all the time. No one who knew Michelle for a second thought she was abusive. Besides Mark's claims, there is no proof that Michelle has ever been cruel to any of her partners or even her children. The jury had to make a decision after the statements. On June 6, 2014, Mark Castellano was found guilty of killing his ex-girlfriend, Michelle Warner. He was given a 27-year prison term and a $10,000 fine. In 2026, he will be able to get out of jail. The death of Michelle was a terrible and sudden blow to her family and friends. She left behind 2 kids who were too young to understand what it meant to lose someone. Sadly, one of them was in the house when she was fighting for her life and saw her dead body, though he probably didn't know that at the time. When I think about Caden, I feel terrible. He lost his mum because of his dad, and he will never have another parent again. Michelle died when Caden was only 3 years old. It's so sad that he has to live his life without any of his parents. Haley, on the other hand, lost her mother, who worked hard, forever. In 2017, Caden lived in Odessa, Texas, with Mark's parents. Michelle's mother, Donna, tried to get custody of Caden, but there have been no new developments so far, and it looks like she was not successful. But Haley moved in with her dad after he and Michelle split up and stayed with him until the trial. Michelle made mistakes in her life, but she got back on her feet when she saw how bad her mistakes were. Someone who was violently angry and resentful chose to end her life just as she was making plans for a good life for herself and her children. Mark made Michelle look like the bad guy and himself like the victim, which broke Michelle's family's hearts and made them sick. Mark not only killed Michelle so cruelly, but he also didn't think twice about slandering her reputation and character, which is disgusting. Michelle will never be able to follow her dream of becoming a lawyer. One person made an unchangeable choice that changed and ruined more than one life, so she will never be able to enjoy her children's birthdays, graduations, weddings, or other important events. There is no good thing that can come from this situation, and there is no lesson to be learned. This whole case seems so odd and unlikely to follow through. Michelle was trying to do the right thing by making her life better and getting back on good terms with the father of her child. But Mark stopped all of this and shut that door for good without warning. Thanks for watching. If this case left you shocked, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more true crime cases. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.